660 was a strange number, because in Long Island, where I lived, telephone exchange codes almost never ended in 0. Who ever heard of a telephone number like Ivanhoe's 02368 or Sycamore's 05000? Phone numbers weren't assigned like that for the most part. Los Angeles, however, was an exception. They actually had a Normandy 0 exchange there. In any case, the code 660 had gotten my attention for reasons I explained earlier, and that made me think I should try the other exchange codes that ended in 0, seeing what they all did. For example, when I dialed 290, it would start ringing right away. There was always a lot of hum on the line while it was ringing. And then some guy would answer.
Hello? Hello? Who's this?
Who indeed? Who was this guy whose phone number was only 3 digits long? It was very odd. I asked him where he was and he said he was in Lynbrook. Well, it became apparent on subsequent calls that whoever he was, I couldn't hang up on him, because if I did, he would still be there when I picked up my phone again a few seconds later. Whatever 290 was, I didn't think I liked it. But there were other codes that were rather innocuous. For example, 250 and any 4 digits did this.
I'm sorry, we are unable to complete your call as dialed. Please check the number and dial again, or ask your operator for assistance. This is a recording, 5166. I'm sorry.
There was another one of those recordings with a numerical ID on it, one I had not gotten before. And of course that recording was different from the one I got on most of these codes ending in 0.
I'm sorry, we are unable to complete your call as dialed.
Which at my house, of course, didn't have any people on it. But this last thing was interesting too because of the noises that preceded the recording. First of all, there was this really interesting metallic clicky sound. I kept imagining some sort of a mechanism making that noise. It looked like a combination of clockwork and an old-fashioned carburetor. And the long ring was cool.
I'm sorry.
Then when I got around to the code 280, I got something similar but slightly different.
I'm sorry, we are unable to complete your call as dialed. Please check the number and dial again, or ask your operator for assistance. This is a recording, 5167.
5167 this time. From calling these two codes repeatedly, it became clear that actually the two were interchangeable. Whatever 5166 and 5167 were, they went together because you'd always get one where you got the other. They also turned up on the codes 450 and 480, but that was only true from my house. From Larry's house in the Franklin 4 exchange, the code 450 did something completely different. Picking up Larry's phone and dialing 450 would cause it to switch to an old-fashioned dial tone, which his phone normally didn't have. But then that dial tone didn't seem to respond to anything I dialed. So 450 did that at Larry's house, nothing at all at Neil's house, and went to the 5166 and 7 recordings at mine. Larry's exchange, Franklin 4, served a different part of Long Island than mine. It was southwest of me, and it appeared to be the same basic type as mine, because they both did this all the time. And 660 appeared not to do anything at all when you dialed it. But there were differences between Larry's Franklin 4 line and my Lynbrook 3 line. One of the ones that really caught my attention, at least for a while, was the fact that the code 890, vacant at my house, did this at Larry's. Well, there was the same sort of tone that was used as the special dial tone on 660. But you know, it turned out that Larry's exchange used that tone just for leaving your phone off the hook and not dialing anything. And all 890 did was do the same thing as leaving your phone off the hook. Just that tone, which wouldn't respond to dialing or anything else. False alarm. Back at my house, there were a series of codes 510, 610, 710, 810, and 910, which all did this.
Operator.
Operator?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I got you by mistake.
Okay.
Yes, they just went to the local operator, which seemed strange because you could just dial 0. I didn't know what they had those other codes in there for. But one thing you always had to do with the operator was excuse yourself before hanging up, because that local operator could hold you up indefinitely if she wanted to. I learned that pretty early on.
Don't you hang up. You've angered me. And when you anger me, you anger the phone company and all the power necessary to tie up your lines for the next 50 years.
660 plus any 4 digits I'd tried always did this. As did the codes 540 and 550. Now there was one last code that is worth mentioning here, and that is 970.
I'm sorry. All circuits are busy now. Will you try your call again later, please? This is a recording. 5166. I'm sorry.
On this code 970, there wasn't any clicky noise. But there was that same long ring, and as usual, it alternated between going to 5166 and 5167, except this time it said all circuits were busy now.
I'm sorry. All circuits are busy now. Will you try your call again later, please? This is a recording. 5167.
The 5167 circuit busy recording had an especially low volume level. I didn't think much about this at the time, but this one little place in the network, which would later turn out to be in a very well-known building, was destined to change my life forever. How could something like this telephone recording be a life changer? Well, the hint is, the volume on it is very low.
This is a recording. 5167.
As it turns out, the continuous ring sound before those recordings was rather uncommon for the telephone network. But I did find one other in Ronkonkoma, Long Island. It was a new office code, 981, and all its numbers did this. But this one never went to a recording. It just rang indefinitely. The mysteries of all this were piling up faster than I could solve them, but occasionally something would come to clarity. For example, that question I'd been wondering about. Why is it that when I dial 311 from Neil's house, it's a party line, and from my house there aren't any people, even though it's the same recording? Well, my first wake-up call about this came when I called the 5168 recording.
I'm sorry. We are unable to complete your call as dialed.
After having returned from camp, and it had changed. Now it sounded like this.
I'm sorry. We are unable to complete your call as dialed. Please check the number and dial again, or ask your operator for assistance. This is a recording. 5168.
My first thought was that for some reason they had copied the 311 recording onto 5168, and then I didn't give it another thought, until early October when I heard this.
Please check the number and dial again, or ask your operator for assistance. This is a recording. 5167.
Now it was becoming clear what was going on. The phone company had some sort of a master tape that they were using to make all their recordings sound identical, and they were putting this one voice everywhere. It was even on the recording I got when I left my phone off the hook.
This is a recording. Please hang up. There appears to be a receiver off the hook. Please check your main telephone and extension. Then try your call again. Thank you.
So knowing that the phone company was using a master tape to make all their recordings sound identical, finally here was the explanation as to why 311 was a party line at Neil's house and not at mine. It was simply that these were two different recordings. My house went to one, Neil's house went to the other, and the one at Neil's house just happened to be low and people could talk on it. That's all it was. But now there was some research to redo, because earlier, when I had dialed all the area codes followed by a vacant prefix, there were certain ones on which I thought I had gotten the same recording as 311. For example, when I called a vacant prefix in area code 212, New York City, I got this.
I'm sorry. We are unable to complete your call as dialed.
And it turns out that was the same recording as 311. But what about area code 203 for Connecticut?
I'm sorry. We are unable to complete your call as dialed. Please check the number and dial again, or ask your operator for assistance. Recording 21223.
Now, I'd missed that. The first time I got it, I figured it was just my local recording because Connecticut is nearby. And I hung up before it said 21223. Well, what about the toll-free area code 800, followed by a vacant office code?
This is a recording.
21233.
21233 this time. And come to think of it, all the area codes upstate had gotten me to that recording. Let's try Buffalo.
This is a recording. 7164.
Yeah, missed that one the first time. Well, as to why New York Tel was in the habit of putting this standard tape on all their recordings, it's possible that it has something to do with the fact that New York has been known to produce some very strong accents. For example, here's what I got calling a vacant code in the Caribbean area code 809.
I'm sorry, we are unable to complete your call as dialed. Please check the number and dial again, or ask your operator for assistance. This is a recording, 2122.
Yikes! But New York City does have some accents that have a certain charm to them. For example, here's what I got calling vacant prefixes in both area codes of New Jersey, 201 and 609.
I'm sorry, we are unable to complete your call as dialed. Please check the number and dial again, or ask your operator for assistance. This is a recording, 2126.
You know, there's something about the history of New York City that produces accents like that. I keep imagining her as being some lady from the Lower East Side named Sally O'Malley. And to my ears, her voice is kind of charming compared to Myrna Burns from Brooklyn over here.
I'm sorry, all circuits are busy now. Will you try your call again later, please? This is a recording, 2122.
Yeah, much later. Anyway, this wasn't just about accents. This was about geography. Because as I was getting these different recordings, each with its own ID number, it became clear that each of these was a gateway.
2126.
That's the gateway to New Jersey.
21223.
That goes to Connecticut.
2122.
That goes to Puerto Rico, among other things.
21233.
That's where 800 numbers go, at least from my house. And then for calling back to Long Island from Atlanta.
5162.
Fascinating, but only to me. I didn't know anybody else who had the imagination to understand that there was a tapestry of switching behind these recordings, and so I remained the only person I knew who even cared. But other people were interested in the party lines, and there was some news on that front. One day at Neil's house, we were listening to 311, and there was one guy on there named Herbie, whose voice was 3 times as loud as anybody else on the line. He was getting a lot of attention. People were even asking him, since he was so loud, to give out their phone number so they didn't have to shout so hard. It was positively eerie the way his voice stood out in the crowd of dimly audible voices. I yelled to him and said, "Herbie, how come you're so loud?" And he said, "Elementary, my dear Watson." Well, gee, I wonder what he was doing. That was when Neil and I decided to experiment with hooking an amplifier into the phone. The most obvious thing to try was to unscrew the mouthpiece, take that little cartridge out, and clip on alligator clips to the terminals from a cassette tape recorder, put it in record mode. You have to fake the thing into thinking there's a cassette in there, like this, and plug in a microphone and try talking on the party line that way. Well, we got noticed. Everyone started paying attention to us, even though we weren't shouting. So, I left Neil at his house talking on the party line through the amplifier, and went out to a payphone to see how he was coming through.
Sorry, we are unable unable to complete your call as dialed. Please check the number and dial again, or ask your operator for assistance. This is a recording.
7.
I'm sorry. We are unable...
Louder than everybody else on the line, and even louder than the recording, which in the case of this 311 wasn't saying much. But this was exciting because now Neil and I could be big shots on the line, and we got right to that. Unfortunately, with power doesn't always come the wisdom to know how to use it. And so I'd say we were sort of a mixed blessing to the people on the line. On the one hand, we were helping people by shouting out phone numbers. On the other hand, we could get kind of obnoxious, especially when we got flack from some of the people on the line. Because rather than taking the hint and just sort of piping down and not being so overbearing, we sometimes, if people gave us a hard time, would jam the line by playing something like this. What can I say? We were beginners at this and very juvenile. Now, of course, talking on the amplifier was something I could only do while I was at Neil's house. Sorry, that was another one of the jammers we would use on the party line sometimes. Anyway, as I was saying, this only worked from Neil's house because... Anyway, the party line... Anyway, from my parents' phone, I could not use the party lines, of course, so all this amplifier stuff only happened when I was at Neil's house. But hopefully that was about to change, because I was about to get my own phone line. The question was how to make sure that the new phone line I got was the right kind of phone line, because I was determined to get one like Neil's. Now, at this time, I had almost come to the conclusion that the first 3 digits of the phone number were the determining factor of the sort of phone line that I would get. I wasn't absolutely sure, because there were certain patterns that suggested otherwise, and also it seemed like too simple an answer. Nonetheless, I could see that my best shot was to try to get a 599 number, Lynbrook 9. I'd seen the good 660 work at Harriet's house and at the payphones in my hometown, and those were all 599 numbers, so my mind was made up and I called the business office. They took the order and assigned me an 887 number. Fortunately, I had the presence of mind to call back the next day, cancel the first order, and then make a new one, this time requesting a 599 number, and they were kind enough to give it to me. So now, all I could do was cross my fingers and wait for the day of installation, which would be about a week away. In the meantime, there was a previous mystery that was starting to clear up, this one.
Calling, please. Hello? Please repeat the number you are calling to the special operator.
It finally occurred to me that I should tell the operator the number I'm calling and see what happens.
What number are you calling to?
239-9979.
Please dial 239-9979 again. This is a recording. Please dial the number again.
This was somewhat odd, since if I dialed the number again, I would always get the same thing. One thing I noticed was that if I said the letters of the phone number,
CE9-9979.
Please dial CE9-9979 again. This is a recording.
the announcement would say letters too, but that didn't explain why it was telling me to dial it again and again and again. I tried giving her another Cedarhurst 9 number, even though I had dialed 9979.
The number you dialed, CE92888, is not a working number. Please consult your directory and dial again. This is a recording. Please consult your directory and dial again.
Now that made a little more sense. Perhaps there had been an error so that 239-9979 was really supposed to do that. I tried other numbers in Nassau County, such as
593-9828.
I'm sorry. You have reached this office by mistake. Please dial again. This is a recording. Please dial again.
But all the Long Island numbers I could think to try, except for 239, did that. However, I later found out that if I gave her a number in Queens, the system would accept it.
The number you dialed, LA53111, has been changed. Please note the new number, area code 516-922-7536. This is a recording. The new number is...
So this system, whatever it was, which I had gotten on a Long Island number, seemed to have more to do with Queens and Brooklyn than it did with Long Island. Interesting. Now, there was actually another system that pieced together custom announcements for you, which I had gotten just a few weeks earlier. I won't dwell on it much here because there are many tapes of it elsewhere, but here's a tape of it in its first incarnation when it was only a few months old and there was only one in the world. Even though my tape recording quality is not so good, I think you can tell how nice it sounded at the time. And you gotta wonder, will anything like this ever sound that good again?
The number you have reached, 889-1174, has been disconnected temporarily. At the customer's request, calls are being taken by 544-0680 in New York City. In the 212 area, please make a note of it. 889.
This was actually the first time I heard that voice on the phone. And unlike the other telephone voices, this one had a surprising combination of being clear and businesslike, and at the same time, very warm. It was really a pleasure to listen to.
In the 212 area. If you need assistance, you may stay on the line, and an operator will answer.
Now, coincidentally, the world's first one of those just happened to be in Hempstead, Long Island, about 5 miles from where I lived. So I found it during its first week of existence, and they only had it running from 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. So to my disappointment, I called it on a Saturday and got,
I'm sorry, the number you have reached is not in service or temporarily disconnected.
Fortunately, the intercept system with the nice warm voice was only temporarily disconnected too, and it came back on Monday. Here's how Bell Labs was describing it.
You have just heard a fully automatic intercept system help a customer who called a non-working number. This newest ESS system, developed by Bell Labs, automatically intercepts calls to non-working or changed numbers and gives the reason why the number is not in service and the new number if it is available. The system does this by putting together previously recorded phrases and digits like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. Busy Bell system intercept operators will be relieved of 95% of the misdialed calls they now answer, leaving them free to handle unusual situations. This is Ruth Steinberg reporting for Bell Labs.
Another mystery was solved when an installer showed up unexpectedly. He was going to install the 887 number that I canceled. Well, I told him the order was canceled, but while he was there, I asked him if there was a number to ring my phone, the 593 number of my parents' line. And he said there was. You dial 660 plus your own last 4 digits. Oh my goodness, I had never tried that. I tried dialing 660 plus my whole phone number, and 660-1111 and 660 and other possibilities, but never that. After he left, I picked up my phone, dialed 660 plus my last 4 digits, and it gave me a second dial tone, but it was the normal dial tone. But then every 15 seconds, it would make that little tone. Now, I'd actually heard this sound before. About 1 out of every 3 times you'd call 660 from Neil's house, you would get this kind of a dial tone, and every 15 seconds it would do that. What was that anyway? Another mystery unsolved, of course. Now, from Neil's house, whether you got the special dial tone I showed you before or this one, it really didn't matter because once you dialed a digit, the line would go silent, and then you'd be able to talk to people. But here, if I dialed any digit at all, it would switch to the receiver off hook tone, which here was being used as the special dial tone, and you would never get a silent line, even if you hung up and rang the phone. That tone would just keep coming back. which meant that this 660 could never be used as a party line. There was just never a time when the circuit was silent. Another disappointment was that no matter what you dialed, you couldn't ever get the fancy ring that I got at Neil's house. And you know, it's funny, even the tone didn't seem as fun. The tone my exchange used for receiver off hook and for this was kind of dirty and ugly sounding compared to this tone, which is the one I got from Neil's house on 660 and would soon be able to get on my own phone. Yes, the tones were actually very similar, and they were supposed to be the same as far as the industry was concerned. But to my ears, they were so different that when I first heard that special dial tone on Neil's 660, I didn't even realize that that was meant to be the same tone as what I got when I left my phone off the hook.
This is a recording. Please hang up.
So as you can imagine, I was quite ready to be rid of Lynbrook 3, and just when I thought I would have no more reason to pick up my parents' phone, I just happened to dial 311 one last time, expecting to hear that loud recording that had nobody on the line. Silence? No recording at all? I stayed on the line and listened for a while, and every now and then I would hear something like this. How about that? That's somebody connecting to the line after dialing the exchange code, then dialing the last 4 digits of the number, not realizing they're on the line, and then hanging up after not hearing anything. Well, it was pretty clear what was going on here. This was a new party line in its infancy. Now, I could either let it get going by itself, which might take a while because 2 people would have to try saying hello while they were both on the line at the same time. Or I could help it along by talking to people when I hear them come in.
Hello? Hello, hi.
I now don't recall exactly what it was that I said to these people when they connected to the line. I do know that I must have introduced myself as Evan from Malvern and said something to explain what the so-called party line was, so that many of them stayed on the line and kept talking and listening. Every day after school, I'd run home, hook up my cassette recorder amplifier, and get right on the phone. And after about a week of doing this, I'd gotten it to this point.
Hi. What's your name, boy? Hey, boy, what's your name? I'm not a boy. You're the one, not you. Denise. Oh, the other one? Denise. Hi. Who is it, Holly? Hey, boy. Who is it? Hi. Denise? Yeah. Hi. Who's on the phone? No, it's my best friend. Who's on the phone?
No, it wasn't always all girls, but it was mostly junior high schoolers like myself, most of whom lived in the area to the east of me, Freeport, Baldwin, Merrick. The ones who lived nearer me only had certain phone numbers. In my Lynbrook Malvern area, the only people who could connect were those who had Lynbrook 3 phone numbers. The other 2 exchanges never got on. In Valley Stream, to my west, only the Locust 1 numbers. In Rockville Center, only the 6, 7, 8 numbers. This was telling me something about the network, which I figured out later. In any event, it was a busy and fun-filled week, which culminated in my having my own phone line installed. Ironically, it wasn't until my last week of being stuck with my parents' phone that I finally had a party line to call and a way to make it ring. And I knew that once my phone line was installed, I was going to have to mostly abandon my new party line, the one I had just gotten going. Because now, with my own phone, there would be no excuse for hanging on my parents' line all day, and my phone line, because it was a 599 number, would not be able to reach this 311. it was going to reach the other 311, the one I got from Neil's house, which had gotten this whole adventure going in the first place. But there was more fun and more mysteries to come. Many of the telephone recordings used here are reconstructed using material from later times in the 1970s. The final segment of Freeport 311 is actual, but from approximately 1 year later.